another beautiful composition from Jimmy Page, the Rain Song, of course. First things first, we'll break this down into sections, like for instance, the section that I just played. We'll just call that section 1 and take you through that and then slowly connect it to the other sections because there's quite a bit going on here. But first things first, we're in a G suspended 4 tuning, okay? So starting from low to high, starting with the 6th string, you drop that down a whole step to D. Drop the A string down a whole step to G. Drop the D string down a whole step to C. The G string stays the same. And then the B string comes up a half step to C. And then the D string, or excuse me, the E string, the first string, drops down a whole step to D. And you wind up with a G suspended tuning. Very unusual and very cool as usual with Jimmy Page, okay? So I'm going to show you how I play this out the gate. I use my ring finger and my pinky, and I'm on the 7th fret on the D string and the B string. The tab will be just a nice guide, but it'll be a combination of the tab and me sort of verbally explaining it. So you want to sweep upward across the strings. You can hear that at the beginning of the recording. You don't want to connect with the 6th string, however. And then you go into the free form strumming, just nice and loose, soft and relaxed. And you can see I just moved that down a half step from the 7th fret to the 6th. And the advantage of using these 2 fingers out the gate is that when you get here, you move it down to the 5th fret, of course, and then you add your 2nd finger to the 4th fret on the G string. And you wind up with that beautiful chord. And what he does is he hits the, we'll just call the strings by their normal names, so he hits the open A string, and then 2 solid downstrokes for that chord. Pinky comes off, is replaced with the 1st finger at the 3rd fret on the B string, and then slide on over to the 2nd fret. And then make what would be a standard A bar chord, but instead of being at the 2nd fret, we're at the 3rd fret. And you want to maintain your pick across the A string, the D string, the G string, and the B string, okay? Don't hit anything below that or above it. 2 strikes on the A string and move the chord down to the 2nd fret, what would be your normal A position. And then we move into the next section. So this is the same shape that we started out with using the ring finger and the pinky. But we're up on the 11th fret. And if you want, you can play this with your 2 middle fingers. It really doesn't matter. If that's more comfortable, just do it that way. But we're going to move from 11 to 9 to 12, back to 11, all the way down to the 4th fret. And we'll talk about what happens there when we get there. Okay, so when we get to the 4th fret, we're going to slide those fingers back to the 9th fret and add the 8th fret on the A string to it. That gets missed sometimes, but that's a pretty important part of it. Okay, and that sweet little action right there is 10 on the B string, 11 on the G string, and 12 on the D string. I attack it with the open A string, every string except the top one really, and just slide the chord a half step down. Okay? And that leads us into really where the verse starts. So you just slide into the verse, so to speak. And that's just strumming the chords out. We'll talk about the other bits that you can kind of hear vaguely in the studio recording, but particularly live. So we'll get to that part as well. But for now, we're just gently strumming through the chords. Another upward sweep across the strings. And that is an A minor shape, if you will. I'm on the 9th fret on the B string, 10th fret on the G string, and 10th fret on the D string. it's got this eighth note feel to it, the and feel to it. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So I think it's best to kind of play it with those kind of strokes. What's on the upbeat is an upstroke, and what's on the downbeat is a downstroke. So I'm on the 5th fret on the D string and the 5th fret on the E string. And then we move from the 5th fret on the D string to the 4th fret. And then add your second finger to the 5th fret on the A string. So that was. But while you're strumming the chord, don't sort of single those notes out. And this bit goes 3 times in a row, but at the end of the 3rd time, you want to play this. Which you can clearly see on the tab, but that's 5 on the A string, 4 to 5 on the D string, and then an open G string. Us into the next bit. So for this next section, we're playing a regular A chord shape at the 2nd fret, and we're staying with the A string, the D string, the G string, and the B string for this. And this is the chord that he played earlier, where you're adding your ring finger to the 4th fret on the G string. And on the studio recording, the acoustic guitar actually just strums through the chords. Quite lovely, and then he tracked the electric guitar in there. But of course live he put the two together, so that's what we're going to do right here now in this lesson. So we've got, which you can see on the tab, and what I want to point out about this is if you look at the D string being played at the 2nd fret, the easiest way to look at this part is that this part of it never changes, but the D string moves up chromatically in half steps. So if that helps you to kind of get your head wrapped around it, that's kind of a cool way to look at it. Raise it up. I use my pinky to grab that note. And finally. But of course he's putting the lick right in between all of that. So the lick is there on the tab, so you can see that the lick never changes. It's just that ascending D string that changes. And you can see when he gets to that 4th chord, after he does the upstrokes right across the E string, B string, G string, and D string. And then we move to the next section, of course, and this is the part of the song that maybe has the most subtle variations throughout it, you know. And then again, you know, if you go and you look at live versions of it with Jimmy Page, you're going to find even more stuff going on, right? So anyway, in a nutshell, I think this is probably one of the harder parts of the song to play because the shapes can be a bit tricky if you haven't been playing very long. But I'm barring across the 4th fret, okay, mainly across the first 4 strings, okay? And then this finger is on the 5th fret on the A string, and you're eventually going to need the 5th fret at the bottom string, and I use my ring finger for that. But I land the chord first. I think that makes it easier to play. And then I pull my finger into position for the, removing that so you can see what's going on there. think that's a pretty good way to do it. It's just easier for me. And then we move to this chord. So again, there's some heavy barring going on here. I'm on the 2nd fret now on those same 4 strings, the first 4 strings. My ring finger is on the 4th fret on the A string, and my pinky is also on the 4th fret on the 1st string, the E string. And that's more or less what he plays on the studio recording. So he's moving from this and he lands this chord right here, which is simply one finger. You can use whatever finger you want, really, maybe one of the first 2, of course. But it's the 2nd fret on the A string. All right. And again, we're staying off of the top string, the 6th string. Give the chord a nice sweep, and then the lick across the 3 bottom strings is. But of course, do that while you're holding the chord. And we're once again back to that. And of course, what happens at this point is you go back to the very beginning to repeat all of that. But that's where a couple of variations start to happen. For instance, when you land on the part we were just talking about, that bit right there, he starts adding some extensions or doing some hammer-ons and pull-offs. So we get to the... So what's happening there is it's the same chords, right? So he starts to do little fills and ad-libs and things like that. I'm hoping you can just see that on the screen. Back to this chord. Just little things like that. So feel free to mix that up and play it any way you'd like. Back to this chord, and then the same thing up here as this chord, but up on the 5th and the 7th fret. Just little things like that that he drops in, so feel free to do that. You can play it the other way too. Any way you want to do it is perfectly fine. So we're moving from here to here, back, this chord, and finally, of course, and once again, all of that happens once again. So now we move into the bridge, or the midsection of the song, so to speak. And of course, by now, the whole band's in. We've got the drums, the bass, the strings, probably a few guitars firing away. But I'm just going to show you how I've played it live with bands over the years, just kind of pulling a few of the guitar parts together to make it sound full. So once we finish the other section with this, that bit right there, you do not play the, you jump right off of that right into the bridge. So what I'm playing here is I'm barring at the 7th fret across the first 4 strings. And I'm adding my ring finger to the 9th fret on the 1st string, the bottom string. Pulling it off or letting it off for the last strum. Then move that down to the 5th fret, but go ahead and capture the A string as well. And then what I like to do is I'm placing my index finger, my first finger, on the 2nd fret on the 1st string, the E string, 3 solid strums. And then 4 to 2 on the A string. And then place your index finger in the 2nd fret on the D string. And for that I'm playing strictly the A string, the D string, and the D string. And then he plays that little lick. I like to try to hold the chord down while I do the lick because, again, I think it sounds fuller on one guitar. You actually play that section 4 times, but at the end of the 4th one, you don't play the lick. You just go straight back into, right into the verse. So, as mentioned earlier, I wanted to address, if you will, the little arpeggios that he plays. And you hear this really well in the live recordings, but it's also in the studio recording. It's just a little bit more buried. So again, that's just the first 2 chords of the verse. And he arpeggiates them like so. Moves to the next shape, the A minor shape, and that's it. So that's really nice to add in there if you want to put it in as well, okay? And that's it really so far. You go back through a whole verse again until you wind up at the end of it, of course, with this. And we are into the outro, the tag, which is also one of the most beautiful things that he's ever come up with. So let's go ahead and do it. So for the outro, I'll break it up into 2 sections as well. Let's say one where you're just basically working with strumming chords, and then where you kind of do the hybrid picking, the pick with the combination of the finger or fingers, however you choose to do it. All right, so you slide into this first chord. I'll just put the tab up on the screen for this, but play it nice and slow so that you can see it. It's all chord shapes that he's already used, but he's moving them up the fretboard a lot more. To the hybrid picking part. So let's get into that right now. So basically what we have for this outro is we have a what would normally be a D minor triad shape. Okay, I'm on the 5th fret on the bottom string, 6th fret on the 2nd string, and 7th fret on the G string. Okay, and you don't sort of form it at first. I play it like this. So I kind of form it as you pick your way through it. But you're playing the D string open with your pick and I use my 2nd finger. Feel free to use your 3rd finger in your right hand. But you're attacking the E string, the first E string at the same time. Okay? And then we're going to essentially do the same thing again, but this time we're just using the first finger at the second fret on the E string, but it's the same idea. Same picking pattern, same everything. Same strings, same pattern, same everything. And then take this same idea down to the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th fret. The only difference there is he plays a set of 16th notes. And I trust you can see that on the tab, okay? And then we're in the 5th fret on the A string and the 5th fret on the B string, and we're skipping a string for this. We're skipping the D string. Move that down a half step. And then finally the 2nd fret. With a few extra strings in the mix. And then it's a full-on, what would normally be an A chord shape. I play it with my last 3 fingers, but you can play it any way you'd like, and you just sweep across the strings from the A string all the way down. And of course, that whole thing sounds like this. There you go, the Rain Song from Led Zeppelin and the mighty Jimmy Page.